They said they didn't book me a room because they didn't think I'd come. That's what my brother told me, standing in a 5-star lobby, surrounded by the rest of my family. No hug, no welcome, just a smirk and silence. Hi, I'm Sabrina. I showed up for Thanksgiving thinking I still belonged. But when you realize your family stops seeing you as part of the picture, you stop waiting to be framed. This isn't just a story about being left out. It's about what happens when you choose peace over permission and legacy over loyalty. Have you ever been the one they didn't expect or didn't want to show up? Tell me in the comments. What would you have done if it were you? The rain had begun before dawn, a steady rhythm against the wide kitchen windows that framed the Willamette like a postcard I'd stopped sending. Portland had a way of making stillness feel intentional, like quiet wasn't absence but presence. I liked that. The gray didn't bother me anymore. It matched the muted browns of the wood floors, the warm amber of the lamp I always forgot to turn off, the soft hissing of my French press just finishing its last breath of steam. I leaned over the kitchen counter, sipping the first cup, black, strong, while flipping through a legal pad of notes from last night's remote meeting. Half of it was unreadable, scrawled shorthand about clinical trial deadlines and projected timelines. I didn't mind. My handwriting wasn't for anyone but me. Just like the life I had built here. Unfussy, reliable. My phone buzzed. Zoe's name lit up the screen with a heart emoji she'd insisted on adding. I answered quickly. Her face burst into frame, missing teeth and all. Aunt Sabrina. I smiled. Hey, Munchkin. She was sitting somewhere sunny, maybe their kitchen in Scottsdale. The camera wobbled as she turned it to show me her glitter slippers. We're going to the Breakers again. Mommy says it's even fancier this time. They have swans. My throat tightened, but my voice stayed light. Wow, that sounds magical. Yeah. Do you want the top bunk again like last year? Or should I take it this time? I stared at her. What? She blinked. You're coming, right? Mommy said we all are. I already put your name on the kids' menu for the turkey dinner. You like cranberry, right? I forced a smile. That's sweet of you. She nodded proudly, then launched into a story about her class play where she got to hold a papier-mâché pumpkin and pretend to faint from stage fright. I let her ramble, nodding, murmuring when appropriate. Her voice was warm and real. The rest of the conversation felt like static. After we hung up, I sat at the table, the steam from my second cup of coffee barely curling upward. I opened my laptop and went to my email. Nothing from Danielle. I clicked open our old family thread from the year before. Buried under digital confetti and heart emojis was a message labeled Thanksgiving 2023 Breakers Edition. Sent 3 days ago. No greeting. Just all booked. Mom and Dad in the executive suite. Me, Brent, and Zoe in the garden villa. Marcus has the coastal king. No mention of me, no room, no invitation. I stared at it for longer than I should have. Then I closed the laptop and walked to the window. Outside, the leaves were floating, some already plastered to the sidewalk, others dancing in wind they didn't control. I used to think family meant you were anchored, but I'd spent 30 years proving I could drift just fine. The voicemail from Danielle came an hour later. Sabrina, if you're planning to come, which I doubt since you always make things awkward, just make your own reservation. We can't be responsible for extra rooms. Anyway, talk to Mom. Bye. I didn't call Mom. Instead, I pulled a fleece throw over my lap and called Grandpa Harold. He answered on the second ring, voice low and steady. Pumpkin? That was his name for me since I was 5. Only he could still get away with it. They're doing it again, I said. He didn't ask who. I explained Zoe's call, the email, the voicemail. I kept my voice level. I didn't need to cry. That kind of sadness had expired in me years ago, like milk left too long in the fridge. Now it just had a dull smell. I'm not surprised, he said finally, but I am sorry. They don't think I'll come. And maybe they're right. He was quiet. "You built your life without needing them," he said at last. "But not needing them doesn't mean you deserve to be erased." My breath caught. Go if it's something you need. Not for them, for you. Closure is a kind of peace. I closed my eyes. The tears didn't fall, but something inside me did. We talked about other things. His knees, the neighbor's dog, the way tomatoes still clung to the vines despite the cold. When we hung up, the silence in the condo returned, familiar and welcome. That night, I pulled my carry-on from the closet. I hadn't used it in months, still smelled faintly of eucalyptus from the sachet I kept in its side pocket. I packed light. 2 neutral blouses, 1 pair of navy slacks, walking flats, a silk scarf I didn't wear often but always brought just in case. Then I opened the small drawer near my bed. The box sat where I'd left it, wrapped in pale blue paper with a gold ribbon I'd tied too carefully. Inside, a pearl hair clip, shaped like a falling leaf. I'd found it at a small shop downtown months ago. It was delicate, almost fragile, and reminded me of how Zoe used to twirl whenever she felt pretty. I imagined her opening it, smiling, maybe wearing it to school despite Danielle's disapproval. I placed it gently in the corner of the suitcase, tucked beneath my pajamas. Outside, the rain hadn't stopped, but inside, something had gone still. They may have forgotten I existed, but I never forgot what they were capable of. The sun was still high when I stepped out of the cab, even though it was nearing 4 in the afternoon. Arizona light had a way of clinging to you, brighter than necessary, like it was trying too hard to prove something. I adjusted my scarf even though I didn't need it, and wheeled my navy carry-on across the drive of the Four Seasons Scottsdale. The resort was postcard perfect. Mediterranean arches, lemon trees planted in uniform rows, marble floors so polished they caught my reflection before I made it to the entrance. Everything smelled faintly of citrus and expensive hand cream. My flats made soft taps against the tile, but the space was filled with louder sounds. Suitcases rolling, children laughing, silver clinking against glasses. At the front desk, a young woman with a flawless bun and flawless manners greeted me. "Good afternoon. Welcome to the Four Seasons. Checking in?" "Yes," I said, handing over my ID. "Sabrina Miles." "I should be under the Walker Miles family reservation." She smiled, typing quickly, then paused. Her fingers hovered. "I'm sorry, Ms. Miles. I don't see a reservation under your name." Her voice stayed calm, but her brows knit gently. I waited. She tapped again. Clicked once. Clicked again. Her eyes scanned the screen, her smile a bit tighter now. "I do see several rooms under the Walker Miles group. Danielle Howell, Richard and Linda Walker, Marcus Miles. But I don't see one for you." I heard it before I saw her, the sharp clack of designer heels on marble. "Oh," came the voice I knew too well. "She actually showed up?" Danielle's laughter followed her words like perfume, faint, expensive, designed to linger. She stepped into view in a cream sundress and a gold belt that glittered far too much for daylight. On her arm was a handbag with a name I didn't care to remember. On her face was the look she wore best, triumphant. "Hi, Sabrina," she said, just loud enough for the guests nearby to notice. I turned slightly toward her, saying nothing. She looked at the concierge and tilted her head. "There must be some mistake. We only booked for the real family." It landed like a pebble in water. Small, but the ripples went far. I caught the way the couple next to us paused mid-check-in, the way the woman behind the concierge stiffened slightly. I kept my eyes on the desk staff, whose cheeks had gone pink. "Would you like me to help you call a manager, Ms. Miles?" she asked quietly. I shook my head. "No, thank you. I think I have all the information I need." Danielle clicked her tongue like I'd dropped something. "Sabrina, don't be dramatic. You haven't come in years." "That's not true," I replied softly. "I just haven't been invited in years." From behind her, I saw Marcus lounging by the fireplace, a drink in hand. He caught my eye and offered a smirk. Didn't think you'd actually show." I didn't respond. Our parents stood a few feet away near the lobby bar. Dad was sipping something amber-colored. Mom had a magazine in her hand, not looking up. Not even now. For a moment, the world slowed. The marble under my feet, the hum of expensive conversation, the faint jazz piped in through ceiling speakers, and me, standing in the middle of it all like someone who'd walked into the wrong wedding. "I'll arrange my own transportation," I told the concierge, "but thank you for your help." She nodded quickly, clearly relieved to have someone respond with civility. I turned, suitcase in hand, and began walking toward the entrance. The click of Danielle's heels followed me for a second, then stopped. She didn't call after me. She never did. No one did. The air outside was warmer than I remembered. I pulled out my phone and called a rideshare. While waiting, I sat on one of the stone benches just beyond the valet. My suitcase leaned against my knees. I ran my fingers slowly along the handle, feeling the soft grip I'd chosen years ago when I decided I'd start traveling alone. It was odd how quickly dignity could become your closest companion. It never asked you to shrink, never asked why you weren't enough, never told you who counted and who didn't. A valet stepped out to greet a black SUV. A family poured out. 2 young boys, a couple in their 40s, a grandmother in a wheelchair. Laughter echoed. They all moved in sync, a dance choreographed by real love. I watched them disappear through the doors I had just left, and for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel the ache of exclusion. I felt clarity. There's a kind of quiet that only comes after someone tells you in front of others that you don't belong, and you believe them, not because they're right, but because you finally understand they never saw you to begin with. A few minutes later, the driver pulled up in a navy sedan. I climbed in without hesitation. As we pulled away, I glanced back through the window. The hotel shimmered under the Arizona sun, its glass and stone gleaming like polished armor. Inside those walls, my family was toasting their version of togetherness. But outside, the sunlight was soft, honest, almost kind. Kinder than any hug I'd ever gotten inside that hotel. I didn't cry. I called Grandpa. The taxi's air conditioning hummed gently as the car merged onto the freeway. Through the window, the desert opened wide. Distant mountains brushed with gold. Saguaros standing tall like silent witnesses. Inside, it smelled faintly of lemon sanitizer and vinyl. The driver had the radio tuned to soft jazz. Miles Davis, I think. Or maybe Chet Baker. I wasn't listening too closely. I stared straight ahead, phone pressed to my ear. Harold answered on the second ring. "Sabrina?" "They didn't book a room," I said, my voice even. "I showed up. I stood in the lobby. Danielle said they only made reservations for real family." A pause. "I see," he said finally. "I didn't make a scene," I added. "I left." He let out a quiet breath. "That's all I need to hear." We didn't talk long. He didn't ask questions. He never needed to. After we hung up, I closed my eyes and rested my head against the window. The seat was warm from the sun, and I welcomed the silence that followed. Not the kind that comes from loneliness, but the kind that settles in when you've said everything that matters. At the airport, I moved through security like a ghost. No one looked at me. No one needed to. I wasn't looking for recognition. I just wanted the boarding gate and a place to sit. My phone buzzed as I waited near gate B14, then again, and again. I flipped it over, face down on the bench beside me, but the vibrations continued, gentle at first, then insistent. When I finally picked it up, I saw the list. Danielle, 7 missed calls. Mom, 2 voicemails. Marcus, 1 text. I opened Marcus's message. "You always find a way to ruin things." That was it. No hi. No what happened. No context. Just the usual blame. Slipped between silences he never had the courage to break in person. I deleted it without replying. Then came the email notification from Harold Whitman to Richard Walker, Linda Walker, Danielle Howell, Marcus Miles, Sabrina Miles. Subject final notice. I opened it and read, the words calm, unshaken, deliberate. Today on Thanksgiving, an incident occurred that has prompted this action. Sabrina was excluded without cause or communication. This pattern is not new. It is, however, final. Effective immediately, all financial support provided by me to Richard, Linda, Danielle, and Marcus is frozen. This includes mortgage subsidies, tuition assistance, monthly allowances, insurance contributions, and discretionary funds. You are all adults. It is time to live accordingly. I will speak to each of you when, and only when, you can speak with truth, humility, and without entitlement. This decision is not open for discussion. Consider it the natural consequence of values misplaced. I read it 3 times, not because I needed to absorb it, but because I'd never seen him write like that before. I could imagine Danielle's face tightening, fingers scrambling to call, Mom's voice climbing in disbelief, Dad pacing with a drink in hand, cursing beneath his breath, and Marcus probably rolling his eyes but already Googling how to renegotiate his apartment lease. The phone buzzed again. Voicemail from Danielle. Sabrina, Okay, I know it looked bad, but this is crazy. You could have just said something. Zoe's crying. I was planning to post the family dinner photo tonight. Do you know how awkward this is now? Can't you just call him and tell him it wasn't that serious? Another. He's not answering any of us. This is going to affect Mom and Dad too. You know that, right? I don't even know how to explain this to Brent. Then Mom. We could have added a room, but as Danielle said, it was short notice and you know how expensive things get this time of year. Honestly, Sabrina, this reaction is a bit much. If you can afford to fly out here and leave so dramatically, you could have just paid for your own room. I didn't reply. I watched the screen light up with notifications and let each one pass. No response, no engagement, just quiet. Me, my boarding pass, and the understanding that for once I wasn't the problem to be solved. I was the boundary that wouldn't budge. A new email came in from Harold Whitman. Subject, no subject. You did well, you showed up for yourself. I'm proud of that. The plane boarded. I slid my phone into airplane mode and tucked it into my coat pocket. Outside, the tarmac shimmered under late afternoon sun. Inside, the overhead lights dimmed as we prepared for takeoff. As the plane began to taxi, I felt a strange sensation. Not triumph, not even satisfaction, just release. Like someone had been pressing a finger against my chest for years, and finally, it lifted. I reclined slightly and let the cabin hum surround me. The phone, somewhere behind me now, would continue buzzing, desperate for a version of me that no longer existed. And for the first time, I let it ring. The email came early, slipped quietly into my inbox before I'd even finished my first sip of tea. Subject, tuition balance, Zoe Howell. From billing@staugustineschool.org. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe a phishing attempt, but the tone was too polite, too familiar. I clicked. Dear Ms. Miles, as the most recent financial contact for Zoe Howell, we wanted to remind you that her December tuition remains unpaid. Please let us know if you need an updated invoice. The steam from my chamomile curled around my face as I read it again. And again. They thought I was still paying. Danielle had never updated the billing records. Or perhaps she had hoped, somewhere in the chaos of emails and automated systems, that no one would notice. That someone else, I, would just handle it. I didn't reply. Instead, I set the mug down carefully, walked into the kitchen, and began rearranging a drawer that didn't need rearranging. Tea bags neatly stacked, measuring spoons nested like quiet decisions. The sound of the rain softened against the windows, but inside, everything remained still. My phone buzzed. Danielle. Hey, if you get anything weird from Zoe's school, just ignore it. They're probably behind on updating their records. Another buzz. It's been a rough week. We're fine. Just a few things to sort out. Zoe misses you. I sat at the kitchen table, watching the condensation gather along the edge of the window as her words tried to edge their way back into my calm. A third message. Look, I know things were tense, but Grandpa's reaction was dramatic. I'm not saying what happened was right. I'm just saying it wasn't worth this. I could almost hear her voice, chipped polish on her nails, iced coffee in hand, balancing a performance of guilt and self-preservation. She was always good at walking that line. Until now. At 10:06 a.m., my phone rang. Brent. I hesitated, then answered. Sabrina, he said, breathless, as if he jogged into the conversation. I don't even know where to begin. You can start anywhere, I said, as long as it's true. He was quiet for a moment. Then, there's a store card. 3, actually, maxed out. I had no idea they existed. I waited. There's a second mortgage on the house, signed last year. She told me it was a refinance. Still, I didn't speak. I checked our savings account last night. It's practically empty, and she always said your grandfather would never let us fall. She never asked what would happen if he stopped catching her, I said quietly. He exhaled slowly. I believed her. I really thought we were fine, that everything was handled. Zoe's school, the car, the brunches. I just thought we were okay. I looked down at the corner of my placemat, smoothed its edge with one fingertip. You weren't, I said, not unkindly. You just didn't want to see it. There was a long pause. She doesn't know I'm calling you, he said. Of course not. I'm not asking you to fix it, he added quickly. I needed to say it out loud. That's a start. We ended the call not with resolution, but with something quieter. Acknowledgement. Sometimes that's all that can exist in the wreckage. Later that day, I made soup from scratch. Lentils, carrots, celery, thyme. I let it simmer low and slow, filling the condo with a warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. I played an old jazz album and let the sound carry through the rooms like company I didn't need to entertain. My phone stayed silent most of the afternoon. Danielle's Instagram hadn't updated in over a week. No filtered brunch photos, no weekend shopping hauls, no selfies captioned with gratitude and seasonal emojis. The silence was telling, more than any post she could have written. At 3:47 p.m., a message from Harold lit my screen. You don't owe them your peace. No explanation, just that. And it landed like an anchor in calm water, silent, deep, grounding. I opened the drawer by the hallway and pulled out a stack of mail and cards I hadn't touched in months. In it, a drawing Zoe had sent me last spring, crayon on pink paper, a girl with a long brown ponytail, a single pearl clipped above her ear, and a bright yellow sun beaming overhead. I made this in class. It's you, she'd written. I hadn't displayed it. I wasn't sure why. Maybe I didn't want to be reminded of how close I'd once been to her world, how easily I had been folded out of it. The phone buzzed again. Danielle. Zoe asks why you're not coming for Christmas. Then a moment later, she cries when I say your name. I placed the drawing back in the drawer and closed it gently, because here's what I've learned. Guilt dressed as love still leaves bruises, and silence can be protection, not punishment. Outside, the Portland rain kept falling, steady, rhythmic, uninterested in whether anyone noticed. Inside, I stirred the soup, turned down the heat, and let things fall where they needed to. Mom emailed me the same sentence 3 times. This isn't the daughter we raised. This isn't the daughter we raised. This isn't the daughter we raised. No subject line, no salutation, no explanation. Just the same sentence over and over again, as if repetition could undo my silence, as if shame could be conjured like a spell, cast 3 times. It might bring back the version of me they preferred, compliant, quiet, accepting. I closed the email without responding. Outside my window, Portland was dressing itself for Christmas. String lights wrapped lampposts in spirals of gold and red. Shops dusted fake snow on window panes and set out bowls of peppermint taffy no one really liked. A street musician played a mournful version of Silent Night on a saxophone. It didn't sound holy, but it felt true. That evening, I sat in a folding chair in the back row of a small investor seminar at the Benson Hotel. The room was warm, filled with the muted rustle of note-taking and the clink of ceramic cups on saucers. A woman in her 60s stood at the front of the room talking about sustainable income funds, her voice calm, steady. The kind of woman I imagined Harold would respect, not because she was impressive, but because she didn't need to say she was. Halfway through the seminar, my phone buzzed. From Richard Miles. Subject: Disappointed Sabrina. I don't know what Harold told you, but this is not how families should treat each other. He's always been sentimental. This isn't the first time he's overreacted. You know, your mother and I never wanted this. We thought we were raising someone who believed in loyalty. Danielle made a mistake. That doesn't mean we all deserve this punishment. You're better than this. I stared at the last line. You're better than this. That had always been their favorite weapon, disguising shame as praise, not because they believed in my worth, but because they wanted to claim it. I saved the email, but I didn't answer. When I got home, I changed into soft cotton pajamas and made myself a bowl of soup left over from the night before. I lit a candle, a simple one, vanilla and cedar. It flickered next to the window where I usually kept my reading chair. I didn't sit. I just stood there for a moment, watching the wax pool slowly. The next message came an hour later. Marcus, you made your choice. Now everyone's suffering. No greeting, no punctuation, just a clean accusation, delivered like a transaction. I deleted it. The thing about Marcus was, he always assumed someone else would fix the damage after he threw the match. When he was 12 and broke the neighbor's mailbox with a baseball bat, he said I dared him. When he dropped out of his MBA program, he told our parents I didn't encourage him enough. When Harold froze the funds, Marcus assumed I would patch the holes, like always. This time, I didn't. Near midnight, my phone lit up again. It was a voice memo. From Danielle's number. I hesitated, thumb hovering. Then I pressed play. Zoe's voice came through in a hush, small, uncertain. Will I see you at Christmas? 6 seconds. That's all. But it stayed with me longer than any of the emails. I stood frozen in the kitchen, my body suddenly still. The only movement was the candle beside the window, flickering like breath. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't love her, but because love, real love, couldn't survive as collateral in someone else's war. I walked to the bookshelf and opened the small wooden box I'd kept tucked behind a stack of old novels. Inside, the pearl hair clip still sat in its pale blue wrapping. I touched the ribbon gently, then closed the lid. I placed it back on the shelf. That same night, Harold sent a final message. No salutation, no sign-off. You've given them the silence they earned. I whispered the words out loud once, just to hear how they sounded in the room. Then I blew out the candle. The next morning, I made sourdough toast with marmalade and walked to the co-op to buy fresh rosemary. The cashier complimented my scarf. A little boy in line behind me dropped his toy truck and I handed it back. Simple, human things, uncomplicated, unjudged. Later that week, my neighbor slipped a holiday card under my door. Inside, a Polaroid of her cat tangled in ribbon and a handwritten note, "Hope your season is peaceful." It was. I didn't fly home for Christmas. There was no dramatic declaration, no argument over the phone, no goodbye. Just absence. No suitcase near the door. No gifts packed with care. No performance of love that never reached past the front porch. On Christmas Eve, I poured myself a glass of warm cider and curled beneath my blanket by the window. A local station played carols with acoustic guitars. The streets outside were almost empty, just the occasional car, headlights soft in the fog. And then, just as midnight drew close, it began to snow. Not heavy, not fast, just a gentle drift, like the sky had finally decided to let go of what it had been holding too long. I pressed my palm to the glass and closed my eyes. I couldn't remember the last time I felt this kind of peace in December, and I didn't need to. I didn't send the clip. I still have it, wrapped perfectly, waiting. The paper hasn't crinkled. The ribbon's still intact, soft ivory satin tied into a bow I rechecked once and never touched again. The clip is inside, nestled in tissue like a promise I've stopped expecting to keep. It sits in the drawer of my nightstand, beside a silver pen engraved with Zoe's name. Her name hasn't faded, neither has the reason I kept it. March in Portland arrived with cherry blossoms. They bloomed almost overnight. One day the branches were bare, and the next, soft petals began to scatter the sidewalks like someone had whispered spring into the city overnight. I open my windows more often now, letting the breeze drift through my apartment, carrying the scent of damp earth and something gentle I couldn't quite name. I changed out the winter curtains for gauzy white ones that moved like breath. The plants on the sill were blooming again, tender leaves reaching, thriving in the sunlight that slanted in around 7 a.m. Warm, instrumental music played quietly from the kitchen, sometimes jazz, sometimes folk, the kind of music that lets silence have a seat at the table. I hadn't heard from Danielle in 2 months, not even a forwarded email, no vague updates, no subtle guilt masked as nostalgia. The silence, once sharp, had softened, like fabric stretched long enough to lose its pull. They had stopped waiting for me, and I had stopped needing them to. The box from Harold arrived on a Tuesday. I knew it was from him the moment I saw the handwriting. Even the packaging felt deliberate. Tucked inside the recycled paper was a slender case, and inside that, a pearl necklace. Modest, real, no shine meant for show, just weight and warmth and truth. Beneath it, a single card. You stood when others collapsed. That's legacy enough. Harold, I didn't cry. I sat down with it for a while, let the light touch it. Ran my thumb along the clasp and imagined Harold in his study, writing that note with one of the fountain pens he always refilled himself. I didn't put the necklace on, not yet. But I left it on the windowsill that night, where it caught the last of the sun before dusk. The next morning, I opened my laptop and browsed Zoe's school's blog, something I hadn't done since before Thanksgiving. They posted monthly updates, cafeteria menu PDFs, spelling bee winners, snapshots from field trips. There she was, Zoe, on a yellow school bus, window down, her cheek resting on her palm. Her smile was real, not forced, not polished. Her ponytail was messy. Her eyes looked tired, but peaceful. There was a pearl sticker on her backpack. I didn't know if she'd put it there for me. Probably not, but I smiled anyway. I didn't save the picture. I didn't forward it to Harold or tuck it away for some future time. I just looked. Let myself see her. Still growing, still going. That was enough. That Friday, I hosted dinner. 3 colleagues from the research center came over. People who had, over months, slowly become something more than professional. They brought wine, laughter, one very loud opinion about marinara versus arrabbiata sauce. I made pasta from scratch and roasted vegetables with rosemary and lemon. The apartment smelled like warmth. We ate by candlelight, not for romance, but because it made the evening feel a little slower, softer. At one point, someone said, "You always make things feel calm, Sabrina, like everything's in place when we're here." And I laughed. Not the kind you give politely, but the kind that comes from somewhere real. Because for the first time in years, it was true. After everyone left, I washed the glasses by hand, dried each one with the towel my neighbor had given me for Christmas, embroidered with tiny pine trees. I didn't feel lonely. I felt full. I made a cup of chamomile tea and carried it to the bedroom. There, in the quiet, I opened the drawer. The clip was still there. untouched, waiting. Beside it, the pen. I ran my fingers along the cool metal and then gently touched the corner of the wrapped box. Just a tap, like a whisper, like a memory with no bitterness left in it. I didn't open it. I didn't throw it away, because some gifts aren't meant to be given, not yet, maybe not ever. But they still matter. They still mean something. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked out the window. The cherry blossoms moved with the wind, not dramatically, not like some cinematic storm, just a quiet rhythm, graceful, confident. I thought of Grandpa's words, the ones he said the night I almost moved back home for good. True strength is knowing when to hold on and when to put something down gently. I hadn't gone back. I hadn't knocked on any doors. I hadn't mailed the clip, and I hadn't needed to. Because sometimes peace doesn't arrive in reconciliation. Sometimes it grows in the space you clear for yourself, a place with soft light and warm music and one pearl clip that stays wrapped, not because you've forgotten, but because you finally know when not to reach. Outside, the wind moved the cherry blossoms. I didn't move at all. Sometimes the greatest peace doesn't come from being welcomed, but from knowing you no longer need the door to open. Sitting by the window, watching cherry blossoms drift gently in the spring air, I realized I didn't miss them. I missed the version of me that kept knocking. In life, we're taught that family is everything. But real love, real belonging, never asks you to prove your worth. It listens. It remembers. And sometimes it grows best in the quiet after someone tells you you're not enough, and you finally stop believing them. If this story reminds you of a time you had to choose peace over permission, I'd love to hear it. Feel free to share your thoughts below. Sometimes the most powerful connections are made in quiet understanding.